Imagine spending decades of your life, meticulously mastering your own mind.
Right, like really putting in the work.
Exactly. You are an expert yogi. You're a meditation teacher. You know the mental pathways to focus and to emotional regulation better than almost anyone else out there.
You've got the map.
You have the map. And yet, after all that training, all those years, the absolute deepest, most intoxicating sense of peace you've ever felt in your entire life doesn't happen while you're sitting cross-legged on a meditation cushion.
Yeah.
It happens entirely by accident. I mean, it literally slaps you in the face while you were simply standing next to a giant succulent.
It is just the ultimate paradox of the wellness world, isn't it?
It really is.
We have this culturally ingrained assumption that peace is something you have to, hunt down.
Right, like it's a prize.
Yeah, you capture it through relentless, disciplined effort. But the scenario you're describing, it completely flips that script. It suggests that our nervous systems can actually be hijacked in the best possible way, obviously, by the physical environments we place ourselves in.
Which is exactly what we are exploring today on this deep dive. We are looking at the biological, the architectural, and the psychological forces that can just completely override our nervous system.
Fascinating stuff.
So we're pulling our source material today from a deeply personal, highly detailed account shared by Osman. He's known online as the host of the YouTube channel, The Blind Muslim Yogi.
And he's such a fascinating case study because, well, he wears so many different hats.
He does. He is an entrepreneur, he's an energy healer, and he's a highly experienced teacher of yoga and meditation.
Right, and he runs the platform yogawellness786.com.
Yep, where he breaks down ancient sciences, natural methods, and, scientific advancements, always with the responsible disclaimer that these are complementary approaches, right? Not medical replacements.
Honestly, that disclaimer is actually a really great window into how he operates.
Oh,
Well, he approaches his work with a real sense of rigor and responsibility. He isn't just dealing in vague platitudes. He is actively looking for tangible, result-based methodologies.
right.
And that same rigorous observation is exactly what makes his account of this specific trip so compelling.
Oh, absolutely. So he took this trip to a pro-nature retreat in South Africa, and what happened there didn't just give him a nice vacation.
No, it fundamentally shattered his understanding of how deeply ingrained behavioral habits can just be, instantly deactivated by natural elements.
Specifically massive, towering aloe plants.
Yeah, it's wild.
So we have an expert in finding calm who is suddenly, essentially ambushed by calm. But I think to understand why this ambush was so profound, we really have to establish the baseline first.
Right, the before picture.
Exactly. We have to look at the man's state of mind before he ever packed his bags. Because despite his deep, decades-long expertise in yoga and meditation, Osman is fundamentally a self-employed entrepreneur.
Which is stressful.
Highly stressful. And he openly admits that his stress levels, they periodically peak to an absolute breaking point, which necessitates what he calls a timeout.
And that admission is just incredibly validating, isn't it?
It really is.
It completely punctures the myth of the invulnerable guru.
Oh, for sure.
There is this pervasive irony in the modern mindfulness profession where we project an image of permanent zen onto the people who teach these practices.
Right. We assume that because they have the tools, they are somehow biologically immune to the crushing weight of modern life.
But human biology just doesn't work that way. I mean, mindfulness is not a magical, invisible force field that permanently deflects the biochemical reality of stress.
No, because stress isn't just a mood, right? It's a mechanical process happening in the body. If you are running a business, managing finances, dealing with clients, your brain is constantly processing these microthreats.
Exactly. Let's look at the actual mechanism of what's happening to a self-employed entrepreneur like him.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Every time you face a business challenge or, an unexpected expense or even just an overflowing inbox, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it sends out a distress signal.
It rings the alarm.
Right. And that signal activates the sympathetic nervous system, triggering the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands.
Okay.
So your body just gets flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Now, Osman knows how to meditate to clear that out. But the problem is this concept in neuroscience called allostatic load.
Okay, but break that down for me. What exactly is allostatic load?
So think of it as the cumulative wear and tear on your biological system.
Okay.
If you have a single stressful event, say a tiger chases you, your system spikes, you survive, and then your system resets to baseline. That's acute stress.
Makes sense.
But an entrepreneur faces chronic, low-grade stress. The emails never stop. The financial responsibilities never sleep, so the system never fully resets.
It's just always humming in the background.
Exactly. The cortisol levels stay slightly elevated all the time. And over months and years, this constant low-level activation physically damages the architecture of the brain.
Wow.
It literally exhausts the body. That accumulated damage is the allostatic load. And when that load reaches a critical threshold, no amount of deep breathing in your office chair is going to fix it.
Because the office chair itself is part of the problem, right? I mean, I can hear someone asking, why couldn't the master meditator just close his eyes in his home office, use his advanced techniques, and find that peace?
Right.
Why does he have to physically evacuate the premises and declare a timeout?
It comes down to environmental anchoring.
Environmental anchoring. Okay, what is that?
Well, our brains are supreme pattern recognition machines. When you sit in the room where you answer stressful emails, where you manage your taxes, where you field difficult phone calls, your hippocampus and your amygdala physically map those stress responses directly to the geography of that room.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, the lighting, the smell of the desk, the sound of the chair squeaking, all of it becomes a trigger for sympathetic nervous system activation. Your brain associates the physical space with the fight or flight state.
It's like trying to cool down a laptop while leaving 40 demanding applications open in the background.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
You can point a desk fan at the keyboard, which is the equivalent of like trying to meditate in a stressful room, but the internal processor is still completely maxed out.
Right, the fans are screaming.
The battery is draining, and the system is overheating because the environment itself is demanding constant processing power. You have to actually shut the applications down, close the laptop, and walk away.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. You really have to put geographic distance between your body and your environmental triggers.
To break the connection.
Exactly. To allow the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to finally take over.
Yeah.
You cannot forcefully override a geographically anchored stress response using willpower alone.
Even if you are an expert yogi.
Even then, the biological cues are just too strong. Osman recognized that his allostatic load was maxed out, his environment was compromised, and he needed a structural reset. He needed to literally leave the building.
Which makes me want to pause and ask anyone listening right now to honestly evaluate their own spaces.
Oh, absolutely.
We spend so much energy trying to like willpower our way out of stress while completely ignoring what our walls, our lighting, and our proximity to our work are quietly doing to our brainwaves.
We really do.
When your internal processor is overheating, what does your emergency timeout look like? Do you actually leave the environment, or are you just pointing a desk fan at a burning laptop?
And that leads us directly to the specific environment Osman chose for his reset.
Yeah.
Because the destination was not arbitrary.
Not at all.
The decision to physically relocate is just the prerequisite. What happens next depends entirely on the architecture of the new space.
Right. So Osman and his wife, who is now his ex-wife but accompanied him on this specific trip, traveled about 1 to 2 hours north of their home in Johannesburg.
Up into the Gauteng region.
Yeah, which he refers to as the Cone region. And they checked into a place called Aloe Lodge. Now, he makes it clear he has no financial affiliation with this place.
Right, just recounting his stay.
Exactly. This is a 5-star, strictly pro-nature retreat. And they don't just use pro-nature as some marketing buzzword. They enforce it through architectural and policy choices.
Which is rare.
Very. There are no televisions in any of the rooms. The staff actively discourages the use of mobile phones. And the entire evening socialization structure is centered around a large fireplace where guests gather.
If we look at this through the lens of environmental psychology, Aloe Lodge hasn't just built a hotel.
What have they built?
They have constructed a forced dopamine detox.
Oh, I like that term.
Yeah, by structurally removing screens and culturally discouraging phone use, they are systematically severing the low-level, constant dopamine loops that keep our modern brains in a state of perpetual agitation.
Let's unpack that dopamine loop for a second, because I think people hear dopamine detox and think it just means, oh, taking a break from TikTok.
Right.
But it's a profound neurological shift. The smartphone in your pocket isn't just a communication tool. It is engineered to function like a slot machine.
Precisely. It operates on a principle called intermittent variable rewards.
Which means we never know what we're going to get.
Exactly.
Right.
When you pull your phone out, You don't know if you're going to get a stressful email from a client, a text from a friend, a breaking news alert, or absolutely nothing at all.
And that's what hooks us.
That unpredictability is exactly what causes the brain to release a spike of dopamine just in anticipation of checking the device.
Because dopamine isn't actually the reward chemical, right?
Right. It's the motivation chemical. It keeps you seeking.
It's that phantom buzzing in your pocket. It's the anxiety of the modern world distilled into a 6-inch rectangle. Even when you aren't looking at it, part of your cognitive bandwidth is tied up in monitoring it.
Yes, and that constant monitoring keeps our brain waves in a very specific state, the high beta state.
Okay, tell me about beta waves.
Beta brain waves are fast, erratic, and associated with active problem-solving, alertness, and crucially, anxiety.
So we're just walking around in a constant state of low-level panic.
Pretty much. When you are in a high beta state, your brain is treating the environment as a series of problems to be solved or threats to be monitored.
Wow.
By architecturally enforcing the absence of technology, ALOES eliminates the stimuli that trigger those beta waves. They create a neurological vacuum.
And what I find fascinating is what they use to fill that vacuum. They substitute a glowing LED screen with a glowing physical fireplace.
It's a brilliant pivot.
That is a massive behavioral pivot.
It fundamentally changes human interaction. I mean, a screen demands passive, isolated consumption.
Yeah.
It feeds you disjointed, rapid-fire information, forcing your visual cortex and your emotional centers to process a barrage of out-of-context data.
Whereas a fireplace.
A fireplace is the original evolutionary anchor for human gathering. From an anthropological perspective, fire signifies safety, warmth, and the end of the day's labor.
It demands absolutely nothing from you.
Nothing.
You can stare at a fire for an hour, and it doesn't ask you to reply to a message or form an opinion on a political crisis.
Exactly. The visual input of a fire is mesmerizing and, chaotic, but it is slow and predictable in its nature.
Right.
Staring at firelight has actually been shown to lower blood pressure and induce alpha brainwaves.
Alpha waves being the good ones.
Yes, they are associated with relaxed alertness and a calm, present state of mind. This architectural choice forces the nervous system to shift gears from the frantic, seeking behavior of the digital world to an active, present-moment connection with the physical environment.
Okay, I hear all the science on this and it makes sense, but I have to push back just a little bit here.
Go for it.
I want to play devil's advocate. Is it really the nature and the environment doing the heavy lifting here? Or is it just the immense, overwhelming relief of not having a smartphone buzzing every 5 seconds?
That's a great question.
I mean, if I lock myself in a dark, quiet closet without my phone, without my boss emailing me, without the news cycle screaming at me, I'm probably going to feel a massive wave of calmness, too.
You're right. You'd feel a drop in stress.
Exactly. Couldn't Osman's profound experience just be the simple biological relief of a severed digital umbilical cord?
That is a brilliant pushback, and it highlights a crucial distinction in psychology, which is the difference between the absence of a negative and the presence of a positive.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning that the absence of stressors is not the same thing as the presence of a healing force.
Oh, interesting.
Removing the phone is what stops the bleeding. If you lock yourself in a dark closet, yes, your cortisol levels will drop because the active threats are gone.
But I'm not exactly being healed in the closet.
Exactly. You will eventually just feel understimulated, bored, or isolated. The digital detox at the lodge was merely the preparatory phase. It cleared the static.
Okay, I see.
It essentially took Osman's sensory receptors, which were previously jammed with digital noise and entrepreneurial stress, and tuned them to a neutral frequency.
It created a blank slate.
Yes. But what actually filled that silence, what provided the active, measurable therapeutic shift, was the environment itself.
And that brings us to the most visually and physically overwhelming element of the trip, the namesake of the lodge itself.
The aloe plants.
Because once the digital static was cleared, Osman and his wife were left to actually perceive the biological reality of where they were standing.
And what Osman describes is a landscape that completely defied his expectations. We aren't talking about a quaint little garden with some nice landscaping.
Not at all. He notes that the lodge is surrounded by massive, towering aloe plants.
Right, and he specifically emphasizes the scale.
Because when most of us think of an aloe plant, we picture a little potted succulent sitting on a kitchen windowsill, right?
Yeah, something you snap a leaf off of when you burn your finger on the stove.
Exactly. But Osman describes these plants as gigantic, literally taller than a human being, with massive, thick leaves.
is hard to even picture.
He says he had never seen aloe plants of this size in his entire life. They were entirely enveloping the space.
The physical scale here is the primary psychological catalyst. I mean, when we interact with a potted plant, we are the dominant species in that interaction.
Right, the plant is an object, a decoration.
Exactly, a tool.
Yeah.
But when the botanical life is taller than you are, when it dwarfs you and surrounds you, the dynamic entirely flips. You are no longer managing nature, you are submerged within it.
It's the architecture of awe.
Yes.
I was trying to think of how to describe this, and the closest I can get is the feeling of walking into a massive, ancient, biological cathedral.
Oh, I love that.
You know that feeling when you step into an old European basilica with the vaulted ceilings stretching hundreds of feet up?
Yeah, where you just automatically go quiet.
The architecture itself bypasses your conscious brain.
Yeah.
It forces you to physically lower your voice. It makes you slow your breathing.
You feel incredibly small.
Right, but not in a frightened way, in a comforting, awe-inspiring way. Standing among these towering succulents, it seems like they weren't just decorating the perimeter, they were actively dictating the atmosphere of the entire region.
Your cathedral analogy is biologically perfect because it maps directly onto the psychology of awe. Researchers like Dr. Keltner have studied this emotion extensively.
What happens in the brain when we feel awe?
The most significant change is a deactivation of the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN, what does that do?
The DMN is the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thinking. It's the voice in your head that worries about your career, analyzes your past mistakes, and obsesses over your social standing.
Oh, so it's the ego.
Basically, yes. When you experience awe, when you are confronted with something vast that transcends your current frame of reference like towering ancient flora or a massive canyon, the DMN physically quiets down.
Your sense of self literally shrinks.
Yes. The borders between you and the environment blur. You stop obsessing over your entrepreneurial stress because your brain is entirely captivated by the sheer imposing reality of the environment.
So the visual scale shuts down the ego. But it wasn't just visual. Osman specifically describes the air itself.
Right, the scent.
He notes that the air felt incredibly fresh, and it carried a slight, distinct scent of aloe. But then he uses a phrase that absolutely stopped me in my tracks when I was reading his account.
Which phrase?
He said the air felt pregnant with calmness.
Pregnant with calmness. It is a stunning, incredibly dense descriptor.
It's heavy. It implies that the calm wasn't just an abstract feeling. It had mass.
Oh.
It had volume.
Exactly. An environment can feel heavy or thick with a specific energy. Just contrast this with the thin, frantic, jagged energy of a busy city street.
Oh, like Johannesburg.
Right. The air there feels chaotic. It's filled with combustion of engines, the sharp sounds of traffic, the invisible but palpable anxiety of millions of people rushing.
It feels jagged.
Yes. But the air among these massive plants had a tangible density. It was pregnant. And this isn't just poetic language. There was a hardcore biological reality to what he is smelling and feeling.
Are you talking about the actual chemicals in the air?
Yes. We have to look at the therapeutic mechanism of the plants themselves.
Okay, tell me about that.
Botanical life, especially dense ancient flora, emits volatile organic compounds known as phytoncides.
Phytoncides.
Think of them as essentially the essential oils of the plant, released into the air as a defense mechanism against insects and rot.
Right. This is the whole science behind forest bathing in Japan, isn't it? Shinrin-yoku?
Precisely. Decades of research on forest bathing have proven that when humans inhale these phytoncides, it causes a direct physiological reaction in our bodies.
So it's not just a nice smell.
Not at all. The olfactory nerve in the nose provides a direct superhighway to the brain's limbic system.
Wow.
When you breathe in air that is pregnant with these specific botanical compounds, the limbic system immediately signals the HPA axis to stand down.
It forcibly halts the production of cortisol.
Yes. It lowers your heart rate. It increases the activity of natural killer cells in your immune system.
So Osman wasn't just having a psychological reaction to a pretty view. His bloodstream was literally being chemically altered by the respiration of the giant aloe plants surrounding him.
Which perfectly explains why this experience went from being a nice, relaxing vacation to a profound, acute physiological event that completely blindsided him.
Blindsided is the right word. Because remember, we were talking about a master meditator.
Right.
And yet, standing in this garden, he experiences an event that he can only describe as an intoxicating calmness that suddenly slapped him in the face.
Slapped him in the face. I really want to linger on that verb choice.
It's aggressive, isn't it?
Slapped. It's such a violent, aggressive word to pair with the concept of calmness.
It's brilliant because it implies a complete lack of consent or control. I mean, if a wave of calm slowly washes over you, you're easing into it.
You're anticipating it.
Right. But if it slaps you, it means you were walking along, minding your own business, and an external force physically intercepted your consciousness.
And that suddenness, that lack of control, is the crux of the paradox we introduced at the beginning of the deep dive.
Yeah.
Osman explicitly notes that this was a depth and level of calmness that he had never experienced to date, even in his deepest meditation practices.
I really want the listener to grasp the gravity of that statement. We're talking about an expert, someone whose life's work is mapping the pathways of the human mind.
Decades of training.
He has spent years, likely decades, training his brain to find silence. He knows how to actively manipulate his breath, his focus, and his posture to achieve tranquility.
And yet,
standing next to a giant succulent, he gets hit with a level of peace that absolutely eclipses decades of active practice. How is that even possible?
to understand how it's possible, we have to contrast effortful peace with effortless peace.
Okay, effortless versus effortful.
And this uncovers a very profound, almost counterintuitive truth about human psychology and the mechanics of relaxation.
Go on.
Rigorous meditation, as beautiful and necessary and scientifically validated as it is, inherently requires active mental discipline.
Right, you're working at it.
It is a practice. When you sit down to meditate, you are actively concentrating. You are repeatedly dragging your wandering focus back to the breath.
You are observing your thoughts and actively choosing not to engage with them.
Exactly. You're doing work.
Yeah.
Even when the goal of the work is just being, the process to get there is a doing.
And anytime you are doing, there is a subtle layer of effort.
And therefore, a subtle layer of friction.
Mm-hmm.
In psychology, there's a concept known as ironic process theory.
Ironic process theory, what's that?
It suggests that the active effort to suppress a thought or achieve a state can sometimes make that state harder to reach.
Oh, like the pink elephant.
The classic example. Don't think of a pink elephant.
Yeah.
Suddenly, all you can think about is a pink elephant. Similarly, if you sit down and say, I am incredibly stressed, I must relax now, the demand to relax can itself become a new source of stress.
Oh, man. I have lived that.
We all have.
Have you ever tried so hard to fall asleep that the effort of trying to sleep keeps you awake?
The worded feeling.
Or, you light the expensive scented candle, you put on the ambient instrumental music, you sit on your perfectly ergonomic cushion, and you just aggressively think, why aren't I relaxing yet? Relax harder.
It's a miserable loop.
It really is.
That is the friction of effortful peace. What Osman experienced among the giant aloe plants was the exact opposite.
It was involuntary.
It required zero cognitive effort. He didn't have to monitor his breath or discipline his mind. The physical environment simply took over.
The architectural scale shutting down his DMN.
The phytoncides chemically altering his limbic system. The absence of digital dopamine triggers, all of it simply overrode his nervous system.
It bypassed his conscious mind entirely.
And slapped his biology into a state of grace.
It was an ambush of peace.
An ambush of peace. I love that. The environment simply provided a massive, overwhelming resonance of calm, and his biology naturally, involuntarily attuned to it.
And the ultimate proof that this wasn't just some solitary placebo effect, that it wasn't just Osman projecting his desperate desire to relax onto a nice-looking garden, is the control group standing right next to him.
His wife.
His wife simultaneously experienced the exact same profound shift.
Which is so important.
She felt the exact same slap of intoxicating calmness at the exact same time.
Which perfectly validates the experience as an external, objective phenomenon. This wasn't a subjective trick of the mind. It was an environmental reality.
Right.
But as profound as that moment in the garden was, experiencing peace at a quiet 5-star pro-nature retreat is, relatively speaking, the easy part.
Yeah, because you're inside the incubator. You're in a controlled environment meticulously designed for relaxation.
Exactly. The true test of any spiritual or psychological shift, the real measure of its depth and durability, is whether it can survive the transition back into the friction of the mundane world.
The retreat is the laboratory.
And the drive home is the real world.
Which brings us to what I consider the absolute climax of this deep dive, the drive home.
Oh, this part is amazing.
The breaking of the deepest habits. Because this is where the story shifts from a fascinating biological observation to something that feels almost like a neurological rewiring.
The transition from the sacred space back to the secular daily life is always the ultimate litmus test. How much of that intoxicating calmness actually integrated into their nervous systems.
So let's set the scene. The next morning after breakfast, Osman and his wife pack up their car to leave Aloe Lodge.
Heading back to reality.
Right. It is roughly a 2-hour drive back south to the dense, chaotic city of Johannesburg. Now, to truly understand the gravity of what is about to happen, we have to look at the incredibly detailed picture Osman paints of his normal, everyday baseline behavior.
His habits.
His deeply ingrained habits when it comes to existing in the world. First, he loves his music. He states unequivocally that he finds it incredibly boring to drive a vehicle without music.
Which is pretty common.
Sure, but he never, ever, under any circumstances, drives without the radio on. That is his non-negotiable rule.
And we should look at why people do that. I mean, the constant need for auditory input like a car radio is rarely just a pure appreciation for music.
What else is it?
It is often a mechanism to prevent the mind from wandering into uncomfortable territory. It occupies the auditory processing centers of the brain, so the internal monologue doesn't get too loud.
Oh, it's a buffer against silence.
Exactly.
And his second habit is even more pronounced. Osman is a self-proclaimed, unapologetic talker. He cheerfully admits that he talks a lot.
A lot.
So much so that he often makes his friends and associates physically tired from his conversations.
And he provides an incredibly specific, almost staggering metric for this verbal output.
The phone calls.
He says that he speaks to his closest friend for 2 to 3 hours daily on the phone without missing a single day.
Think about the sheer volume of cognitive energy required to sustain a daily 3-hour conversation.
It's huge. It's to the point where his friend has to gently, diplomatically intervene and remind him, Osman, we've been talking for 2.5 hours, just to get him to wind up his thoughts.
So we have a man whose default neurological setting is massive verbal output and constant external auditory input via the car stereo.
This is a highly stimulated brain.
Highly stimulated. So they get in the car, they begin the 2-hour drive back to the city. They're sitting side by side in a confined metal box, merging back into South African traffic.
Heading back toward the entrepreneurial stress that necessitated the trip in the first place.
And what happens? Osman looks at the radio, and he feels absolutely zero desire to turn it on.
Wow.
He turns to his wife and says, I'm feeling so calm, I don't feel like talking.
And her response mirrors his perfectly. She replies, no, I'm also feeling so calm.
And then they drive for 2 entire hours, down the highway, through the traffic, all the way home.
Complete silence.
Complete, absolute, unbroken silence. No radio, no conversation, just the hum of the engine and the road. Osman explicitly notes that he considers this the singular time in his entire life that he was awake with another human being in a vehicle with a fully working radio for a 2-hour period and did not speak a single word or turn on the music.
Never happened before, never happened since.
We really need to pause and deeply analyze the psychological weight of this event because it is monumental.
It really is. When you look at human behavior, our deepest habits, like the compulsion to constantly talk or the absolute necessity of background music, are deeply entrenched self-soothing mechanisms.
Self-soothing against what?
Against the underlying friction of existence.
Right.
We use noise to fill uncomfortable voids.
Right.
We use rapid-fire conversation to manage underlying anxiety, to seek validation, or simply to stimulate a brain that is craving dopamine.
The constant output of words.
Or the constant input of a podcast or radio station. It's a way of keeping the conscious mind occupied so it doesn't have to sit with the vast, sometimes terrifying expanse of its own silence.
Because silence, for a stressed brain, is an amplifier for anxiety. It's the equivalent of jingling keys in front of a crying baby to distract it. Except we are the baby, and we are jingling the keys for ourselves.
And we're terrified of what happens if we drop the keys.
That is exactly it. So the complete and total cessation of these deep-seated behaviors, the fact that a man who routinely talks for 3 hours straight suddenly has zero biological or psychological desire to speak a single word, what does that tell us?
It indicates something profound about what the aloe plants did to his brain. It shows that his nervous system and his wife's nervous system were so deeply, thoroughly, and fundamentally satiated by the biological resonance of the lodge that external stimulation was totally unnecessary.
They were full.
They were completely full. They didn't need to soothe themselves with noise because there was absolutely no internal anxiety left to soothe.
The dopamine baseline was completely restored.
Yes. The default mode network wasn't throwing up anxious thoughts about the future or regrets about the past, so they didn't need to drown it out with the car radio.
The void of silence between them in that car wasn't an uncomfortable vacuum waiting to be filled. It was a deeply fulfilling presence.
And that is why this part of the story is the absolute proof of the concept. I mean, it's relatively easy to be calm when you're sitting by a crackling fire under the stars, completely disconnected from your responsibilities.
Sure.
But sitting in a metal box, navigating highway traffic, moving inexorably closer to your stressful job, sitting inches away from your spouse, and completely breaking your strongest, most reliable baseline habits for 2 straight hours.
That is not just relaxation.
No, that is the ultimate proof of a profound neurological reset.
It truly is. The sheer contrast is what makes the magnitude of the aloe plant's impact so vivid and undeniable.
When you place the image of his marathon, 2.5-hour manic phone calls right next to the utter profound stillness of that car ride, you really see the spectrum of human nervous system states.
And it's crucial to note that the silence in that car wasn't an awkward silence.
Right. Awkward silence is a symptom of tension. It's the feeling of holding back words.
This was a comfortable silence, which is a symptom of profound intimacy and shared peace. The energy of the natural environment had essentially overwritten his behavioral programming, installing a temporary but incredibly powerful patch of pure tranquility.
And looking back at this unrepeated, singular event in his life, Osman draws a fascinating conclusion about the intersection of ancient mindfulness practices and the physical, biological reality of the natural world.
Which leads us to the final piece of our puzzle today. Based on this experience, is there an ultimate shortcut to mindfulness?
Osman concludes his account with a very powerful, highly practical thesis. He states unequivocally his belief that the aloe plant itself possesses a highly therapeutic energy.
And his advice to his audience is incredibly straightforward. He says surround yourself with aloe or make the effort to visit a rich plantation of massive flora.
Because the sheer proximity to that biological energy will vastly improve your ability to combat stress.
And he poses this rhetorical question that I just can't stop thinking about. It's almost a challenge.
What does he ask?
He says, why struggle through so much rigorous, effortful meditation when you can easily absorb these profound benefits directly from plants to boost your mindfulness efforts?
We really need to unpack that challenge carefully because on the surface, it sounds like a very bold, almost contrarian statement coming from someone whose entire life is dedicated to being a yoga and meditation teacher.
Right.
Osman isn't suggesting for a second that we should abandon yoga or meditation. His entire platform is dedicated to teaching these ancient sciences. He isn't saying that active mental discipline is useless.
No, not at all.
Rather, he is pointing out a fundamental structural flaw in how modern people approach the concept of mindfulness.
We treat it like an isolated software program, completely independent of the hardware we are running it on. We try to do it in a vacuum.
Exactly. We make mindfulness infinitely, agonizingly harder than it needs to be by trying to achieve it in sterile, stressful, hostile environments.
Think about the modern attempt at meditation.
Oh, it's usually rough.
We sit in a cramped apartment filled with invisible Wi-Fi signals, the low-frequency hum of buzzing appliances, the harsh glare of artificial blue light, and the lingering, anchored stress of our workday.
And in the middle of all that hostility, we close our eyes and try to force our brains to a state of ancient, tranquil calm using only sheer, brute force willpower.
It requires an immense, almost impossible amount of cognitive effort just to overcome the hostile signals our immediate environment is sending us.
It's like trying to learn how to swim while you are actively fighting against a massive riptide. You are completely exhausted just trying to stay in one place, let alone make any forward progress.
Yes. And what Osman is telling us is that surrounding yourself with the right natural energy, whether that is a dense forest, the crashing waves of an ocean, or a towering grove of giant aloe plants, is the equivalent of finally turning around and swimming with the current.
Nature should not be viewed as just a pretty backdrop for your meditation. It should be used as a powerful, active catalyst to boost your efforts.
The fight insides, the visual scale, the architectural silence.
They do half the work for you, allowing your mind to slip effortlessly into the state you are seeking.
If we connect this directly to the life of the person listening right now, we have to look at the practical application of this thesis.
Because not everyone can just go to South Africa.
Right. You, listening to this, might not have the time or the resources to travel 2 hours north of Johannesburg to Aloe Lodge this weekend.
But the underlying biological principle that Osman is sharing is entirely universal.
The question becomes, how can you intentionally alter the physical biology and architecture of your immediate daily environment to support your mental health?
If an environment like the aloe garden can be pregnant with calmness, we have to ask ourselves, what is your living room currently pregnant with?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is it pregnant with stress, distraction, clutter, the ghost of your workday?
That is a deeply challenging question because it puts the onus of responsibility back on us to actively curate our spaces.
We have to realize that we don't just passively exist in a room. We are constantly locked in a silent, continuous biological dialogue with the objects, the lighting, the sounds, and the living energies around us.
If Osman's highly trained nervous system could be so thoroughly hijacked by the therapeutic energy of giant plants that it completely silenced his deepest, noisiest habits for 2 straight hours.
It absolutely begs the question of what our sterile, tech-heavy daily environments are currently doing to our brains.
It forces a total paradigm shift.
It does. It shifts the paradigm from I need to fix my broken mind to I need to partner with my environment to support my mind.
Nature is an active participant in our psychological well-being.
By integrating natural elements, real, tangible, living elements, not just pictures on a screen into our spaces, we are inviting that effortless, involuntary calmness into our daily lives.
We are reducing the sheer amount of willpower we have to expend just to feel a baseline of, okay. So let's bring this all together and look at the arc of what we've unpacked today. We started with a man who was pushed to the brink by the very real, very heavy allostatic load of self-employment.
A teacher of healing who humbly recognized that he needed profound healing himself.
We followed him through the architectural removal of digital dopamine loops, which cleared the static from his exhausted mind.
That cleared the runway for him to step into the enveloping, larger-than-life presence of giant aloe plants.
An environment that literally shifted his brainwaves through the psychology of awe and the biology of fight insides. We witnessed the unparalleled, involuntary slap of calm that surpassed decades of rigorous meditation.
And finally, we saw the ultimate real-world test of that biological reset. A completely silent 2-hour drive in a metal box that effortlessly broke a lifetime of noisy, self-soothing habits.
It is a truly remarkable testament to the power of the natural world to intervene and catch us when our own internal tools fail us.
It reminds us that sometimes the most profound spiritual or psychological shifts we are desperately seeking don't come from working harder, trying harder, or meditating harder.
Sometimes they simply come from having the wisdom to place ourselves in an environment that does the heavy lifting for us.
Beautifully said.
Which brings me back to the idea of the broken X-ray machine we touched on at the very beginning of this journey. We can't always perfectly map out our psychological stress on a clean binary chart.
No, we can't.
And we certainly can't always engineer a neat, logical cure for it through sheer force of will or discipline. Sometimes the cure is entirely invisible.
It is floating in the heavy, pregnant air of a quiet garden, just waiting to catch us off guard and slap us back into peace.
So I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to explore on your own today as you move through your world. We've just spent this time analyzing how a single exposure to a specific, towering natural environment completely deactivated a lifetime of ingrained, noisy habits for 2 straight hours in a master yogi. Look around the room you are in right now. What invisible, silent energies in your own surroundings are you currently ignoring? And what might happen to your overwhelmed mind if you finally let the right ones in?